The wedding photographer counted to 3 just as the groom leaned close enough for the cameras to mistake tension for affection. Only one problem: he wasn't really her husband. And if anyone inside the glittering ballroom discovered that the marriage certificate in Isabella Hart's trembling hands was part of a carefully crafted lie, she wouldn't simply lose her job. She would disappear. In the world ruled by Matteo De Luca, Europe's most feared mafia king, fake promises were paid for in blood. The applause echoed beneath crystal chandeliers while politicians, billionaires, and crime families celebrated what they believed was the union of 2 powerful dynasties. Only Isabella knew the truth. The marriage contract hidden beneath her bouquet contained one sentence that kept repeating inside her mind. 30 days. Then both parties walk away without obligation. It had sounded simple 48 hours earlier. Now it felt like a death sentence. Isabella had never imagined her life would lead here. At 29, she spent her days rescuing collapsing companies from financial disaster. As one of the city's most respected forensic accountants, she possessed an extraordinary ability to uncover hidden transactions, fraudulent ledgers, and missing fortunes that others overlooked. Her sharp mind had earned quiet admiration, but outside the office she remained invisible, a curvy woman accustomed to strangers judging her before hearing a single word she spoke. She had learned long ago not to shrink herself. Not her body. Not her voice. Not her worth. Those lessons had come painfully. Which was why, when her fiancé publicly abandoned her 6 months earlier for a slimmer socialite during their engagement party, Isabella had walked away with her dignity instead of begging him to stay. She promised herself never again to let someone define her value. That promise was now the only thing keeping her standing. 2 days earlier, a stranger wearing an immaculate charcoal suit had entered her office carrying no business card. Only an envelope. Inside was a contract. A legal marriage agreement. The compensation was enough to erase every debt her late father's medical treatments had left behind. No romance. No intimacy. 30 days. Absolute confidentiality. One signature. When she asked who required such an absurd arrangement, the man simply replied, "You'll meet him tonight." The private penthouse overlooked an endless skyline of glittering lights. Security officers searched her twice before escorting her through towering bronze doors. Silence filled the room. Then she saw him. Matteo De Luca stood beside floor-to-ceiling windows, his tailored black suit fitting with effortless precision. Calm, composed, impossibly handsome. He radiated the kind of authority that made hardened men lower their eyes without being asked. He didn't greet her. He studied her. Every uncomfortable second felt deliberate. Finally, his deep voice broke the silence. "So you're the accountant who refused to falsify evidence against her own employer." She met his gaze without flinching. "I prefer sleeping well." One corner of his mouth almost moved. "Almost. You understand marrying me paints a target on your back. I understand lying to criminals usually does." Several armed men exchanged surprised glances. No one spoke to Matteo De Luca that way. He stepped closer, his presence impossibly steady. "If fear changes your mind," he said quietly, "the elevator is still behind you." Isabella's heartbeat thundered, but her answer never wavered. "My signature isn't worth much if it disappears the moment I'm frightened." For the first time that evening, genuine interest flickered across Matteo's expression. Not attraction. Respect. He reached for the contract, signed it with one smooth stroke, then looked directly into her eyes. "Good," he said. "You'll stay." Before Isabella could respond, every light inside the penthouse went black. Gunfire erupted from somewhere below. The building's emergency alarms screamed. And Matteo's security chief burst through the doors, his face drained of color. "They know about the marriage," he shouted. "They're coming for your wife." The echo of gunfire faded almost as quickly as it had begun. Within seconds, Matteo's security team sealed the penthouse. Bulletproof steel shutters slid over every window, transforming the luxurious residence into an armored fortress. Outside, flashing lights painted the skyline red, but inside, the atmosphere remained eerily calm. Matteo didn't raise his voice. "Report." "The attackers never entered the building," his security chief, Luca, replied. "A diversion. They vanished before our men reached the street." Matteo's dark eyes shifted toward Isabella. "They weren't testing the building. They were testing us," she finished quietly. For a brief moment, silence stretched between them. He gave a slow nod. She understood faster than most of his captains. The fake marriage quickly became tomorrow's biggest headline. Every newspaper celebrated the glamorous union between billionaire businessman Matteo De Luca and his mysterious bride. The public saw elegance, luxury, and romance. No one saw the armored vehicles following them, or the snipers stationed on neighboring rooftops, or the panic hidden beneath every smile. For Isabella, life inside Matteo's sprawling coastal estate became a careful balancing act. The mansion resembled a palace: Italian marble floors, priceless paintings, crystal chandeliers, an indoor garden beneath a glass dome, and a garage filled with exotic cars. Yet despite its beauty, it felt more like a fortress than a home. Each morning, Matteo left for meetings before sunrise. Each evening, he returned with another invisible burden resting on his shoulders. He rarely spoke more than necessary. Yet he noticed everything. He noticed Isabella thanking every member of the household staff by name. He noticed she preferred working in the library instead of the luxurious private office prepared for her. He noticed she always finished reviewing financial reports before breakfast. And he noticed that she never treated anyone as beneath her. Respect, he realized, came naturally to her. Power did not define how she saw people. 3 days later, Matteo placed a stack of financial ledgers onto the library table. "I'd like your opinion." One of his advisors laughed under his breath. "Our accountants have already reviewed those." Another smirked. "She's here because of a contract, boss. Not because she understands syndicate finances." Isabella ignored them. Instead, she quietly opened the first ledger. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Without saying a word, she arranged several documents into neat columns before sliding one page toward Matteo. "This payment appears legitimate." She tapped another. "This one doesn't." The room fell silent. It was divided into 23 smaller transfers across shell companies in Cyprus, Malta, and Singapore. One advisor frowned. "That's impossible." She calmly rotated the document toward him. It would be, if someone hadn't accidentally reused the same authorization code 4 times. No one spoke. Matteo examined the page. Then another. Then another. His expression hardened. Nearly $12 million had vanished. Not through outside theft. From inside his own organization. He slowly closed the ledger. "Everyone leaves." The advisors hesitated. His voice dropped another degree. "Now." Within seconds, the room emptied. Only Isabella remained. "You found that in 20 minutes, Matteo said. She gave a modest shrug. "Numbers tell stories. Most people simply stop listening before the ending." For the first time since their unusual marriage began, Matteo smiled. It wasn't large, but it was real. "You've just embarrassed 6 professionals." "I wasn't trying to." "I know." That was precisely what impressed him. The investigation began quietly. Only Matteo, Isabella, and his oldest bodyguard knew someone inside the organization had been stealing enormous sums for years. But money wasn't the real concern. Missing funds meant hidden operations. Hidden operations meant hidden loyalties. Someone close to Matteo was financing another empire. Late that evening, Isabella continued examining encrypted transaction records alone in the library. One payment caught her attention. It appeared every month. Always the same amount. Always sent to a company that officially didn't exist. Curious, she traced the routing numbers backward. Her pulse slowed, then stopped. The account wasn't funding a business. It was financing private weapons shipments. The recipient's coded initials matched intelligence reports she had accidentally seen earlier that day. The Black Serpents. A rival syndicate believed to have disappeared years ago. The realization sent a chill through her. Someone inside Matteo's inner circle wasn't just stealing from him. They were preparing for war. As Isabella reached for her phone, movement outside the rain-speckled library window caught her eye. A shadow. Perfectly still. Watching her. The figure lifted a camera. A flash illuminated the darkness. Then vanished into the night. At that exact moment, Every security alarm across the estate began to scream. First major attack. The price of loyalty. The mansion erupted into controlled chaos. Red emergency lights bathed the marble halls as security personnel rushed to their positions. The shrill alarm echoed through the estate, followed by a deafening explosion that shattered the silence. One of the front security gates collapsed inward, and armored SUVs burst through the smoke. "The Black Serpents!" someone shouted over the radio. Gunfire exploded across the courtyard. Matteo was already moving. "Get Isabella to the safe room," he ordered. "I'm not hiding," she replied, refusing to take a step backward. His eyes locked onto hers for a heartbeat. Even with bullets tearing through the night, she didn't panic. "You really don't know how to surrender, do you?" "No," she answered. "And neither do you." A faint, almost amused look crossed his face before he handed her a small communication earpiece. "Stay where my men can reach you." Before she could argue again, another blast shook the mansion. Masked gunmen poured through the gardens while Matteo's security team returned fire from reinforced positions. Luxury fountains exploded into clouds of stone fragments, and the once peaceful estate became a battlefield. Hidden among the attackers was another objective. Two men slipped away from the firefight and entered through a service corridor. Their target wasn't Matteo. It was Isabella. She was studying the security monitors in the control room when the door burst open. One guard fell instantly. Another struggled against an attacker before collapsing unconscious. A gloved hand reached toward her. "You're coming with us." Instead of freezing, Isabella grabbed the heavy accounting tablet lying on the desk and slammed it into the kidnapper's wrist. His pistol clattered across the floor. She ran. The corridor echoed with footsteps as the kidnappers chased her through the mansion. Meanwhile, Matteo noticed something missing from the security feed. Camera 12. His chief of security frowned. It just went offline. Matteo's expression turned deadly. "That's Isabella's corridor." Without another word, he sprinted toward the east wing. Cornered inside the estate's financial archive, Isabella quickly scanned the room. Shelves. Locked cabinets. Servers. Emergency backup systems. Then she saw it. Rows of transaction logs connected to the mansion's digital security network. Earlier that week, while reviewing financial records, she had discovered that the biometric access system shared the same encrypted authorization database as the syndicate's accounting servers, a cost-cutting decision made years ago. She logged into the emergency terminal with the credentials she'd memorized during her investigation. The kidnappers pounded on the steel door. "Hurry!" Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She rerouted authorization privileges, revoked every compromised security clearance linked to the suspicious shell companies, and activated an internal lockdown. Throughout the mansion, reinforced blast doors slammed shut. Several disguised traitors hidden among Matteo's own guards suddenly found themselves trapped inside isolated corridors. Their stolen access codes had become useless. The security chief's voice crackled through the radio. "Boss, every infiltrator just lost building access." Matteo instantly understood. Isabella. She hadn't just protected herself. She had exposed the traitors before they could assassinate dozens of his men from within. For the first time in years, his organization held the advantage. Matteo reached the archive moments later. The steel door exploded inward. One kidnapper raised his weapon. Matteo fired first. The attacker collapsed. The second lunged toward Isabella, but Matteo intercepted him with brutal precision, disarming him before driving him to the floor. Within seconds, it was over. Silence returned. Only Isabella's uneven breathing filled the room. Matteo turned toward her immediately. "Are you hurt?" She looked down at a shallow cut across her arm. "It's only a scratch." His shoulders relaxed with visible relief. Without thinking, he removed his tailored cashmere jacket and gently wrapped it around her. "You should have gone to the safe room. And leave everyone else vulnerable?" She offered a tired smile. "I couldn't." He studied her quietly. "You saved lives tonight. I only followed the numbers." "No," he said softly. "You followed your conscience." The words settled between them with unexpected warmth. Later that evening, after the estate had been secured, Matteo led her onto the mansion's moonlit terrace overlooking the sea. Waiting there was a velvet box. Inside rested an elegant diamond and sapphire bracelet, its delicate design resembling an unbroken chain. "It's beautiful," Isabella whispered. "It isn't payment," Matteo said. "It's gratitude." She hesitated. "I've never needed expensive jewelry to know my worth." "I know." His voice was lower now, almost vulnerable. "That's exactly why you deserve it." For the first time, there was no distance between them. No contract. No performance. Only two people standing beneath the stars, sharing a silence that spoke louder than words. Then Matteo gently lifted her chin. "You never need to make yourself smaller," he said. "Not in this house. Not beside me." Before either of them could say another word, Luca's urgent voice shattered the moment through Matteo's earpiece. "Boss, we've identified the traitor." A pause. Then the words that froze them both. "He's sitting at tomorrow night's family dinner." Section 4. Public Transformation. A Queen Before the Crown. The following evening, the De Luca estate glittered beneath thousands of crystal lights. What the outside world believed was an annual charity gala was, in reality, one of the most important gatherings in the European underworld. Behind elegant tuxedos and designer gowns sat the heads of powerful syndicates, influential politicians, international investors, and the entire De Luca family. Every smile concealed an agenda. Every toast masked suspicion. Tonight, Matteo intended to expose a traitor. And everyone expected Isabella to embarrass herself. As she stepped from the grand staircase, conversations slowed to whispers. She wore an emerald silk gown that embraced her curvy figure with timeless elegance rather than hiding it. A pair of diamond earrings caught the light with every graceful step, while the sapphire bracelet Matteo had given her rested against her wrist like a quiet promise. She didn't try to become someone else. She simply walked with the confidence of a woman who finally believed she belonged wherever her integrity took her. Across the ballroom, Matteo looked up. For a moment, the feared Mafia boss forgot every conversation around him. One of his captains leaned closer with a smug grin. "She's drawing attention," Matteo answered without taking his eyes off Isabella. "She deserves every pair of eyes in this room." He crossed the ballroom himself, offering her his arm before hundreds of guests. A week ago, their marriage had looked like business. Tonight, his gesture looked unmistakably personal. Several women who had mocked Isabella's appearance lowered their eyes in silence. Former critics suddenly found nothing to say. The evening shifted from charity speeches to the private family dinner held inside the estate's historic dining hall. Only trusted members of the De Luca organization remained. The atmosphere changed instantly. Luxury disappeared behind tradition. Power spoke louder than wealth. Matteo stood at the head of the table. "Someone here has been funding the Black Serpents." Silence. Then denial. One uncle laughed. A convenient accusation. Another executive looked toward Isabella. Perhaps the outsider misunderstood financial records. Several men nodded in agreement. Isabella calmly placed a leather folder on the polished oak table. "I expected that response." She opened the folder one page at a time. Every document connected hidden shell companies. Every transfer matched forged authorizations. Every forged authorization traced back to one signature. She turned the final page. The room froze. All evidence pointed toward Vittorio Belandi, Matteo's longtime financial advisor and the man who had helped build the De Luca empire decades earlier. Vittorio slowly smiled. So, the accountant solved the puzzle. He stood without panic, without shame. "I taught half this organization how money moves." His smile widened. "You really thought I couldn't hide a second empire?" Several armed guards suddenly drew their weapons. Not at Vittorio. At Matteo. The betrayal had been years in the making. Nearly one-third of the security team belonged to Vittorio. Gunfire exploded across the dining hall. Guests screamed. The enormous crystal chandelier shattered above the table. Matteo shoved Isabella behind a marble column just before bullets tore through the wall where she had been standing. "Stay down." She grabbed his sleeve. "No, they're moving toward the emergency exits." He understood immediately. "It isn't an assassination. It's an extraction," she said. "They're trying to take someone alive." Before Matteo could react, Smoke grenades filled the room. Visibility vanished. Hands seized Isabella from behind. She fought fiercely, driving her elbow into one attacker's ribs, but another injected a sedative into her shoulder. Her vision blurred. Through the smoke, she heard Matteo shouting her name. Then came the unmistakable sound of his pistol emptying its magazine. He wasn't shooting to win. He was shooting to reach her. The kidnappers dragged Isabella into an armored transport hidden beneath the estate. Her consciousness faded, but years of analyzing patterns refused to abandon her. She noticed the transport manifest clipped inside the vehicle. The destination code. The shipment number. The warehouse identifier. With trembling fingers, she quietly pulled a silver hairpin from her hair and scratched the numbers onto the inside of the sapphire bracelet Matteo had given her. If he found it, he would know where to look. One kidnapper noticed too late. He ripped the bracelet from her wrist and threw it onto the roadway as the convoy accelerated into the darkness. Outside the estate, Matteo burst through the burning entrance gates. The convoy had already disappeared. Only twisted metal, broken glass, and abandoned shell casings remained. Then something glimmered beneath the flashing emergency lights. He knelt. The sapphire bracelet. Cracked. Stained with blood. Turning it over, his breath caught. Scratched into the hidden inner clasp were a series of numbers. Not random. Coordinates. A message. She was still fighting. She was helping him find her. Matteo closed his trembling hand around the bracelet, his calm finally breaking as grief and fury collided. His voice became little more than a whisper. I swear. I will burn every empire between us until I bring you home. Far away, Isabella slowly opened her eyes inside a cold concrete warehouse. A familiar voice echoed from the shadows. Welcome, Mrs. De Luca. She looked up, and her heart shattered. Standing before her wasn't just Vittorio. Beside him stood the man who had once broken her heart. Her former fiancé, smiling as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. Here's the final section of the story. Section 5. Final War. The Queen beside the King. The warehouse doors exploded inward before dawn. Armored vehicles surrounded the abandoned shipyard while helicopters thundered overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. Matteo De Luca had not come to negotiate. He had come to end a war. His elite security force stormed the compound from 3 directions as explosions ripped through the outer walls. Gunfire echoed across the docks, and within seconds the Black Serpent's defenses collapsed into chaos. Inside the warehouse, Vittorio smiled coldly. I knew you'd come. Matteo stepped through the smoke, dressed in a black tactical suit, his pistol steady in his hand. You touched my wife. The quiet fury in his voice was far more terrifying than a shout. Vittorio laughed. You've sacrificed an empire for one woman. No, Matteo answered. I finally understood what an empire is for. The battle erupted. Bullets shattered concrete pillars while Matteo's men exchanged fire with the remaining mercenaries. Amid the confusion, Isabella remained tied to a steel chair, her former fiancé standing guard. He looked at her with the same arrogance she remembered. You were always too ordinary for greatness. Isabella met his eyes without fear. No. She smiled softly. I was simply standing beside the wrong man. As he stepped closer in anger, she noticed the electronic control panel operating the warehouse's reinforced security gates. During the frantic preparations for her captivity, she had memorized the emergency override code printed on the maintenance label, a detail everyone else had ignored. Using the sharp edge of a broken zip tie, she loosened her restraints just enough to reach the nearby keypad. Her fingers flew across the buttons. Within seconds, massive steel barriers crashed down throughout the warehouse. The remaining Black Serpent gunmen found themselves trapped in isolated sections while Matteo's team advanced safely through protected corridors. At the same time, Isabella activated the automated cargo cranes above the central floor. Heavy shipping containers swung violently across the warehouse, smashing weapon caches and blocking every escape route. Boss! Luca shouted through the radio. She just divided the battlefield. Matteo's eyes found Isabella across the smoke. Even now, she was saving lives. Again. Vittorio realized too late that the advantage had disappeared. Desperate, he grabbed Isabella and pressed a pistol against her shoulder. Drop your weapon. Matteo didn't move. Neither did Isabella. Instead, she spoke calmly. You've spent years believing money controls everything. Her gaze never left Matteo. But loyalty cannot be bought. Before Vittorio could react, Isabella drove her heel onto his foot and twisted free. The single moment of hesitation was enough. One precise shot echoed through the warehouse. Vittorio's weapon hit the floor. Another shot from Matteo's security team disarmed Isabella's former fiancé as he attempted to flee. Within moments, every surviving member of the conspiracy surrendered. The war was over. Several weeks later, the De Luca estate looked entirely different. The fear that once ruled its halls had been replaced by purpose. Corrupt executives had been removed. The stolen fortune had been returned to legitimate businesses and charitable foundations. The syndicate itself had changed, operating with stricter rules and greater accountability under Matteo's leadership. He had chosen reform over endless violence. Power over fear had become responsibility. On a quiet evening overlooking the sea, Matteo led Isabella to the same terrace where he had once given her the sapphire bracelet. This time, there was no contract waiting. Only a small velvet box. He knelt before her. I asked you to sign a marriage that was supposed to end in 30 days. His voice carried none of the authority that frightened powerful men. Only honesty. I don't want an ending anymore. Emotion shimmered in Isabella's eyes. You taught me I never had to become smaller to deserve love, she whispered. And you taught me, Matteo replied, that even the strongest man is incomplete without someone worthy of his trust. He opened the box. Inside rested a breathtaking ring surrounded by sapphires matching the bracelet she now wore once again, fully restored. This time, he said, there is no contract. There is only forever. With tears slipping down her cheeks, Isabella smiled. Then my answer is yes. Months later, the world watched as Isabella Hart de Luca became far more than the wife of a powerful man. She became his equal partner, the queen beside the king. Not because of wealth, not because of fear, but because her courage, intelligence, compassion, and unwavering integrity had transformed an empire from within. And every time Matteo looked at her across a crowded room, he saw the same extraordinary woman who had refused to shrink herself on the day they first met. Sometimes the strongest love stories begin with a signature, but the greatest ones are written by the choices that follow. The end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a comment telling us your favorite moment. Like the video, share it with fellow romance lovers, and subscribe for more cinematic mafia love stories where passion, loyalty, and destiny collide.